bit and hope that this works as well. And as the live stream goes on, you also have the other.ai automatic transcription that you will be able to access. All right, I believe we're live streaming. Hi, friends on YouTube, and I'm going to hand over to Batul to do our welcoming.
Oh, thank you, Emma. So yeah, it's been 4 months attending really cohort calls, coping with many assignments, meeting with mentors, and hopefully having fun. So what we do at the very end is asking every team to present for 5 minutes. Say what you've learned, what you thought that you would have to do, but maybe change your plan, what future plan that you might have. We don't have, I believe, any presenters 3 right now, so we probably a bit flexible with time. We also live streaming now to YouTube, so feel free to drop comments in the YouTube, and we will run it through 5 minutes of presentation for each. So think about what you think that you liked about each presentation. If you have any kind of comment, questions, also you can drop it either in the YouTube or in the Etherpad. And final reminder, if you've been participating for a while now within the Open Life Science, probably you would know that we do have a code of conduct, which means just to treat everyone friendly, respectfully, in the same way that you would want to be treated. If you witness any kind of unacceptable behavior, feel free to report it. I think we do have the email in the Etherpad, line 16. And with that, we will go into our first presenter of the day, which is, let me see, is Gemma will be the first one. I'm so delighted to have you the first one, Gemma. Yes, over to you.
Thank you, Batul. So I'm going to share my screen. I do have a small presentation. So I hope you can see it now. Yes, can someone? Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. All of you on the Zoom and also on live streaming on YouTube. I'm Gemma from the Ersilia Open Source Initiative, and the project I want to present today is the work I've been doing in developing community around the Ersilia Model Hub, which is a software, a platform to encourage the deployment of machine learning models for supporting experimental researchers. My mentor has been Fotis, and so I want to mention that now and thank him for all the help during this project. And let's go to it. Basically, Ersilia is a nonprofit organization based in the UK, and the mission is to democratize the access to AI and machine learning tools for infectious disease research, making it accessible to scientists that do not have coding or programming expertise. My background is in molecular biology. I did my master's and PhD in Barcelona in the field of oncology and metabolism. And a couple of years ago, I co-founded the Ersilia Open Source Initiative with the goal to make research more open and more shared, and with a special focus on making all of these tools accessible to scientists in low resource settings. I myself didn't know how to code or couldn't use many of these tools during my PhD studies, and this is where my interest for making all this software more accessible to scientists comes from, because I struggled a lot and I would have really liked to see these tools available. Basically, the main product that we are developing at Ersilia is this platform, this hub of machine learning models pre-trained, so meaning that everything that goes into creating a model, which is collecting data, curating this data, training the actual model, and then fine-tuning, validating that it works, and hopefully validating it with experimental data as well, doesn't need to, is only known by experts. And what is lacking is this last layer of deployment, meaning that a scientist can simply come with their question, for example, a new molecule or a natural product of interest, select the model of interest, and then simply get the output, for example, for which antimicrobial could it be used for, or other kinds of bioactivities this natural product might have, without having to understand or to know what is going inside here and having to deploy this model, which is quite complicated if you're not a programmer. So we have 3 types of model in the hub: models that come from third-party authors, are open source, and you can find them in the literature, but they are not really deployed and not easily accessible. Models that have been developed using public data, and models that we have developed in collaboration with researchers. So the focus of the OLS program was in models that are developed by third-party authors. So we are now trying to improve the documentation for these external authors that may want to use our platform to deploy and to make their models more usable. And we are aiming to improving the documentation and creating a community around it. So the challenges that we try to solve during this project are, first, of course, improve our README files so that now in our GitHub everything is clear and people know where to go to and what to contribute. We've also been doing a lot of work on what type of open source licenses are most adequate for our project. We've finally decided on GPL 3, version 3 license. We've developed this Gitbook, which contains instructions for the end users to use our platform. And finally, we've been working on our website, which you can see also in the Etherpad link, which now has a much more clear explanation of what we do and our target beneficiaries. And then in the side of the community, the major focus has been, we have been for the first time participating in the Richie program, which was quite overwhelming at the beginning, and being part of OLS and being able to talk through how to accept all these new contributors in our program was very essential. And we've also had the chance to connect with other related projects in the cohort, hopefully working together in the future. And I think other important things to remember is that there were some inclusivity workshops and some talks about project sustainability, how to obtain funding, other networking opportunities in Europe that have also been very helpful. And what is in the future for us is to continue the work on improving the documentation by creating a model incorporation manual for these third-party authors. We also want to improve our contributor onboarding guidelines based on the outreach experience, and continue disseminating these tools by participating in programs, conferences, and seminars, and of course, improving on our sustainability model. And I know I'm over time, but I will use 10 seconds to thank everyone that has helped us in this project. So first of all, my mentor, Fotis, the whole OLS team, including Emi, Batul, and other programs that we've been actually doing together at the same time as the OLS, and that have been instrumental as well in everything that I've shared, such as Digital Infrastructure Incubator, the Fast Forward Accelerator, and the Software Sustainability Fellowship by the Software Sustainability Institute. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gemma. I'm always blown away by all your talks and everything that you say. Big round of applause. We have so many actually comments coming within the Etherpad. I love your slides. Well done, lots of work. Someone asking about mentoring and outreach. How's your experience as an outreach mentor? We have also many things coming in as we speak. Would you be able to answer that or share your experience?
Yes, sure. So in the mentoring for outreach, we are very happy now. We have 2 interns working with us. The contribution period was a bit scary. We had over 200 interested applicants and more than 60 that actually did contributions. So for a small project such as ours, this was highly unexpected, also very encouraging to have so much interest, but a bit difficult to manage. So we basically copied the structure of the Open Life Sciences program, where each intern would have GitHub issue with the specific tasks that they could tackle. So that's how we managed. But yeah, it was overwhelming, particularly during the application period. But we are now, super happy to be working with these 2 interns for this summer. And then other questions, the response from the users and any need to train and onboard people. The response from the users, so we have 2 types of users: computational biologists, meaning people that deploy models, and people that use these models. Our users are mostly located in low-income countries, and we actually work with them. We establish partnerships with these institutions, and we do train them on how to use these tools. Hopefully, as the hub grows and it also gains popularity, we'll need to do less and less training, because we'll have documentation that covers different use cases and makes it easier to interact.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Lots of congratulations as well coming from the YouTube. Yeah, that's really amazing. Thank you so much, Gemma. I think if I did not miss anything, I'm going to hand it to Malvika now.
Thank you so much, Gemma. I left a question for you there, mostly because I've been thinking a lot about data management and modeling and how do you manage it. I'd love to hear that before I go next, if that's okay.
Yes. So in data management, you mean the data used to train the models? Okay. So if these are models that we collect from the literature and that are or third-party authors that deposited, most of the data is already living in other repositories such as Campbell. In this case, we just link it to it. And then for data that has IP issues, at this moment, we are still discussing how to do it because we acknowledge that only using data that is public makes it very narrow. So what we are trying to devise is a privacy preserving framework where the underlying data is not shared. Though this is not ideal in terms of open science. It's still better than actually none of this data being used for anything and just being hidden or shelved somewhere. So that's how we do it. Data management is usually using public repositories, and we are now starting to work on what to do with private data.
Thank you for sharing that. That's like a lot of work, I can imagine. And I guess working with private data respectfully and providing the framework is actually an important part of open science. And thank you for all the amazing work. Congratulations from my side. I'm going to move on to the next speaker. We have Evelyn Greeves today, going to talk about cloud span.
Hi, I'll just share my screen. One moment, sorry. Can you see that okay?
I see your speaker view.
Oh, okay. Sorry. How about that?
Perfect. Go for it.
Okay. So hi, I'm Evelyn, and the project I work on is called CloudSpan. So I'll start by telling you a little bit about the project and the background of the project. So the project is based around challenges in the field of metagenomics, which is basically analyzing lots of genomes at the same time. So often in the case of the lab that we work with, it's to do with environmental biotechnology. So taking like a soil sample, looking at the bacteria in that sample and taking all of the DNA, sequencing it, and then trying to assemble all of the genomes and find out what's present, which, as you can imagine, is a massive amount of data. And so increasingly, these kind of analyses need high performance computing resources, which many biologists don't have the skills to do this. So the aim of CloudSpan is to narrow the skills gap around high performance computing and using the command line, which is necessary in order to use most high performance computing resources. In our case specifically, we use a cloud-based high performance computing cluster. So we use a Carpentries format for our courses. So this is an example of, on the left, of one of our courses, core skills courses about understanding files and how to use the command line. And then on the right is an example from one of our more advanced courses about performing specific genomics and metagenomic analyses inside the cloud. As part of the project, we want to build a community of bioinformaticians who can support each other in their learning journey. And that's part of my role, but I didn't know very much about community building and management, which is where OLS-5 came in. So I'll just quickly cover some of the things I've achieved, and then I'll talk a bit about how I got there. So one of the things I found really helpful to start with was learning about this community participation model. as a framework for understanding how to encourage people to interact and participate more. So moving from like just consuming our courses and our content to contributing and collaborating with one another. I think this is a really nice framework for kind of thinking about how to move between those different stages of like participating in the community. So one of a major thing that we've done in terms of like community building is we held our first code retreat in April, where people came to work on their own, work to apply the skills they used during the course, ask questions, apply it to their own data. And it was also a good chance to meet community members and get input on what they want to see from the CloudSpan community. And using those discussions and suggestions I was able to build some personas and using the personas and pathways exercise, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in a couple of slides' time. As part of that, I also set up a Slack workspace for course participants and people who've an alumni of the course, so people who've done the course already, to encourage networking and knowledge sharing. And I've been writing blog posts on relevant topics to share within that network to try and help get people to engage and generate discussions. In terms of how I got there, the one thing that I found useful initially was the open canvas exercise, because I think, especially particularly thinking about the users and contributors and the different channels and how those two groups might differ for our courses and where they overlap. And also just generally thinking about the problems and the solutions and how we can address those with different parts of the project. I also had two really useful expert consultation calls. So I spoke to Batul and she gave me some really practical tips about ways to communicate with community members. So via Slack or a newsletter and using Zenodo communities, that kind of thing. So that was really helpful. And then a bit later, I had a conversation with Stephanie Butland, who used to be community manager for our Open Sci and is now working on a community manager on a new project, I believe. And we talked about the ways that I could use my previous experience in science communication and apply that to community building. And we also talked about focusing on individual community members as opposed to always thinking about the whole community as ecosystem, and how focusing on individuals can actually strengthen that ecosystem in general. And that was a really interesting conversation with her that was really valuable. I also, as I mentioned earlier, used the personas and pathways exercise. So for thinking about the different needs of our community and how those different individuals from different backgrounds could be encouraged to make more contributions. So next steps, we have another code retreat next month. So I'm really looking forward to meeting more of our community and listening to what they have to say, discussing what they want to see from the community and from the project, and then hopefully using that information to develop these personas further and hopefully apply them more. I'm also hoping to carry on engaging with community via Slack and via blogs on the topics relevant to the training that we offer. I'm hoping to work with some of our course alumni community members on case studies about how they use the training that we gave them in their research, which I hope will be mutually beneficial and ultimately will help us to encourage more collaboration between community members by helping people sort of show what they're working on and share that with other people. So I think I'm a bit over time, so I'll just quickly do my acknowledgements. So my mentor, Anne, has been amazing and gave me lots of guidance and feedback. Obviously, thank you to Batul and Stephanie for their time and the expertise they shared with me. Also, CloudSpan is a team. So everybody on the team works really hard to write, deliver and organise our courses. And Emma in particular, her enthusiasm and support is really appreciated. And she also was the one who told me about the scheme, which I also appreciate a lot, obviously. And thank you to the OLS team for making the scheme happen. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Please give her a round of applause. I'm being awkward. I don't know what to do. Thank you so much. Just want to acknowledge Emma is also here. We have lots of comments on the on the Etherpad. I'm just going to quickly check on YouTube before I come back to some questions. Lots of well done, lots of claps as usual. Just want to start with some comments. That was a great one-sentence intro to metagenomics. I personally love that you use Carpentry's infrastructure, which is open source, of course, but also I really appreciate how you've taken care of resources for different levels of learners. Wonderful work. I really like I'm assuming it's about Canvas exercise. You learn a lot by proxy. Also, one more, code retreats sound really inviting. Love the reflection on your OLS journey, and very impressed by the reflection to find the skill difficult myself. There's a question around, would love to hear your experience on how easy it was to get people chatting on Slack, starting discussions.
Yeah, so that's something that I can see Sarah laughing, Sarah Dalston, who's also on our team. It's something we're kind of still working on, is getting people in a space where they feel comfortable enough to share that kind of, it's quite vulnerable to ask for help from people you don't know. And there's kind of something we're still working on. We have actually had today somebody ask a question, sort of like a big question for the first time, which is really good. And in the next time we run our courses, some of them are going to be in person, and I'm really hoping that will help develop community in a way that can, if people get to know each other better, I think it will help build community. So as it's kind of something we're still working on. It's not very easy, but we're just going to keep trying and keep iterating new ways of trying to interact with people, I guess.
I see Vicky, actually. I think that's a question
Yeah,
from
I was
Vicky.
going to say, I asked the question because I have exactly the same problem. So I'm glad to hear it's not just me. Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said. It's just really difficult to get people who don't really know each other to then ask a question to like a big group of people. So yeah, thank you for answering that. It definitely makes me feel a bit better.
Yeah, and as Emma just said in the chat, actually, the people interacting on Slack are people we've built, so people who've been to the code retreat, and we've had a chance to talk to them more. And I think that with Stephanie talking about building, sort of like working with people one-on-one as a way to build community as a whole, I think was really useful and very applicable to our quite small community.
Yeah, I love that when you mentioned expert meeting with Batul and Steph, and thinking about individuals who are there and that can become potential contributors. That's really useful to hear. And Batul says in the chat that she was the one to learn from you. Wonderful work. Looking forward to how this grows. Evelyn, congratulations and applauses by Anne and Fotis. Yeah, thank you so much, Evelyn. We have the link to your repository, and I assume people can learn more about you there. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Bernice.
Yeah, thanks, Malvika. And thanks for the presentation, the two presentations before. I think we have now the last presentation for the graduation today. So Vicky, you will talk about the Turing-Roche partnerships. Are you ready?
Yes, I am. The internet is slightly patchy in this room, so please shout if I cut out, but hopefully it will be fine.
It's probably the same on my side. So can someone shout also, because I have also internet issues?
Yeah, maybe it'll be me and Bernice in the ether. So hopefully that'll be all right. Can you see that okay?
Yeah,
and that's
perfect.
Not presenter mode. Perfect. Yeah, so thank you so much. My name's Vicky Hellon, and I'm the community manager for the Turing-Roche partnership, which I'm going to be talking about. So first, yeah, a really quick overview of what the project is and the partnership. So it's a 5-year strategic partnership between the Turing Institute, which is where I'm based, and with the National Institute in the UK for Data Science and AI, and between Roche, which is the global pharmaceutical company. So the aim of this partnership is to collaborate to investigate the term patient heterogeneity, which basically is why disease manifests in different ways in different patients, and also why patients might respond differently to the same treatment. So over the 5 years, the partnership wants to develop methodology that will improve patient outcomes. So really kind of in that step-by-step process in the top picture shown on the right. But a key part of this partnership, as you can imagine, is the community aspect. So actually building connections and collaborations between these two organizations that haven't formally worked together before, and facilitating the research and kind of open practices. And they've shown their commitment for this partnership by hiring me. I'm the full-time community manager for the project. And I wanted to bring this to the OLS program because when we started, it was about 6 months in. We're now about a year in. And because it's so early days, I have the opportunity to embed open practices in the partnership. And I thought kind of participating in OLS would help me do this. So what have I been up to during OLS? The advice in the programs really helped me put the basics in place. So I established a GitHub repository. I'd never used GitHub before, so this was a big achievement for me. And I also put together a very detailed onboarding document for anyone joining the partnership team. We actually have a new postdoc starting today, so I'm going to send him the onboarding document in a minute. And also some funded projects starting in September. So that will be really useful to get some real-time feedback on that document. And a big achievement during the program for me was launching a knowledge share series for the partnership. Wanted to start bringing together the two organizations in the same space. So I launched the first event in April on the topic of missing data. And then we ran Maze a few weeks ago on the topic of predictive modeling. So we have speakers from Turing and Roche each time. So it's really great for the audience to kind of hear different academic and industry perspectives on the same topic. And we had some really good engagement. So there's clearly kind of appetite there for these events. So we had 200 attendees from over organizations at both events, which was really amazing. I got some really great advice from my mentor, Katy, when setting this up around kind of being clear on goals for the event. And I also found the persona and pathways exercise, which Evelyn mentioned as well, really useful for thinking about kind of who would come along to these events and then steps for how they could kind of get involved in the partnership afterwards. Something I'm also starting to look at is developing a fellows program for the partnership. Obviously, there's a lot of great examples of these around, things like the Software Sustainability Institute. And the idea behind this is kind of to get early career researchers involved in the partnership, to get kind of more sustained researcher engagement throughout the year, support them with a small grant to travel to conferences, be ambassadors for the partnership, and kind of get involved with things in the partnership, like the knowledge shares, as well as having their own kind of small project as well. Still in the planning process for this, but again, my mentor helped facilitate a chat with the Elixir Fair Plus program, who gave some really valuable advice on running fellowships, which has been really good to hear whilst in the planning stages. And what's next for the partnership? Hoping to launch that fellows program in autumn. As I mentioned, a new postdoc starting this week, which will expand the partnership research, and also again, some funded partnership projects starting in September. Also, I'm looking to kind of produce some more creative outputs for the partnership. So perhaps kind of small videos of people kind of talking about data science methods. And I also want to continue kind of growing the community and embedding open practices within the partnership. So overall, a huge thank you. It's been a really great experience. I think the program's really helped me to think about my partnership more holistically. I definitely can get bogged down in the details. So thank you so much to the organizers, all the different speakers, and lastly to my mentor, Katy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. A big round of applause. Thanks a lot for the presentation. So I saw some questions. So currently mostly comment on the document. So like another cracking one sentence intro to the science. GitHub in a few weeks. Well done. Very well done. And onboarding document is such a great way to get someone started. So lucky postdoc. So a lot of welcome. Yeah, thanks. Amazing image games. Love the presentation. So thanks for all the comments. There is a question. Can you share the links to the newsletter? Can you put in the chat or in the document? Would be nice.
Yeah, I'll put in the ether.
Yeah, thanks. How do you plan to develop the community and network? That is.
Yeah, so I think we actually have like a lot of people I didn't mention in the presentation, but we also have a Slack workspace, which I mentioned. So we actually have a lot of people in that, but not that many people chatting. And I think because it's two different organizations being brought together, it's kind of double the amount of people not knowing each other. So I think something I want to do is that it's been really amazing to have the huge audience for the knowledge share series, but actually it means it's hard to integrate networking aspects to those events because there's so many people attending. So I think something I want to think about running in autumn is maybe like smaller community networking events, see the appetite for those and actually kind of get people working on different, kind of working out what they're working on and whether it could work together. Also, we're really lucky. We had an in-person event with Roche yesterday, and some Turing people, including Malvika, came and did some talks about the work at the Turing. And actually people mingled more than I thought. So I think also just kind of like making those events happen and then bringing people together in a room. So that's kind of, next steps, I think, for that.
Thanks. And then there was a question for all the speakers. So I think you can give, there is needs for community building. We need, I can read at some point, I promise. The need for community building is common audits is great. I'm not sure I can read it. And, okay. I don't know.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, I think the person that, sorry. And okay, can you read it? It would be easier, thanks.
So quite a lot of projects now, there's some need for sort of community building. And like we have got to the point where we're actually employing people specifically to do that, as opposed to just hoping it's just going to happen in the background or be unpaid labor. But it's still the case that you're like the only person in your team who is actually doing that work. And I wondered what opportunities there are to sort of network with other people. So like for the software sustainability institute is good for the software sustainability side. I wonder if there's more sort of community building focused.
Yeah, I can answer that from my side. I know it's a question for all the speakers as well. I think it's such a good point. And I definitely think there's like points where you do feel lonely being the only one kind of like doing community on the project, even though it's obviously great to be kind of paid for that kind of work. I've been really lucky that at the Turing, again, Malvika has put together a team. We have community managers on different projects. So we have a space where we come together fortnightly to talk about things that are happening in other people's projects and kind of techniques. So I think that obviously is not open widely, but that internally has kind of been very useful for me. So I wonder if it's similar, if there's institutions with other community managers that they can kind of come together, because I found that really valuable.
Does any of the other speakers want to also answer this question? I mean, I think the question was for all speakers, if I'm right, Emma? Yeah,
I can go. So I think it's a major problem, especially because in the case that Vicky shared, she's community manager. In my case, I am not a community manager. I do it because it has to be done, but we don't have this specific position, and that's often a challenge. We don't have the funds to actually support this position. So I think the best advice I got was to find other communities that are already more established and try to join in. So there is a few in the UK, for example, Software Sustainability Institute in all software related issues is great. It's more difficult to engage with academic researchers at different institutions because they have their own agendas and their, let's say, scientific interests, and it's difficult to actually make them participate in these Slack channels, etc., unless there is a very specific need from their side that is covered in these channels. So I think it's also about slowly changing this, especially in academic research where everyone works very siloed, and there is now all these programs like OLS and others that are emerging. So slowly, I think this will change and people will be more open, but certainly it's not an easy task right now. And there is not enough funding for this either. So.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that I haven't, other than through OLS, I haven't really found other communities of community managers, if that makes sense, to interact with. It sounds like really good to have other people to like bounce ideas off. And I mean, I don't know if there are other community managers at the institution that CloudSpan is based at. I'm kind of involved in, I guess, so the Software Sustainability Institute like part fund our project, so we're kind of involved with that. But yeah, I think there's a need for a community of community managers, if that makes sense. But then I guess somebody has to manage that community, so then it just becomes never ending.
Is there any conferences?
Marika, are there any, or Amy, are there any conferences on community management?
Very interesting. Not really sure. I think Carpentry Con is happening. It is not conference, but they have quite a lot of conversations around community practices. A good point. We should probably bring that back on Slack and ask people to share a bit more. But in general, yeah, any open science related conference helps. And as Vicky was also saying, that sometimes local in-person events have a lot more gluing power. Evelyn, you were also saying that. But also, Gemma, funding is an issue, really.
Yeah. I think there is still one question for you, Vicky. I think we have a bit of time.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, okay. There is in the partnership website, it's a publication of methods and algorithms will follow the principle of open science. What about data and auction data?
Yeah, that's something we're navigating at the moment. So we funded 2 18-month projects for the partnership on missing data. But they're using a Roche database. So there's been a lot of back and forth with kind of contracting. And I thought we might be able to make the data open, but I think it's looking like we're not going to be able to because of these kind of big contracts. So that's been interesting to navigate. But I think what we're looking to do is maybe kind of generate synthetic data so that when these funded projects publish, that is something for people to kind of be open. But yeah, I agree. I think that on the website front and center was actually kind of before we got into the nitty gritty. But yeah, I'm sure many other people have had this experience kind of navigating as much as you can make open, but also kind of keeping, yeah, things sensitive that need to be sensitive and closed.
Okay, thanks. There are, I think, lots of hurt and sparklers and applause on YouTube, from YouTube. But I think, yeah, anyone else, any further question for Vicky or all other speakers? No? Otherwise, should we close? Okay. Thanks everybody for giving this talk. Thanks everybody for joining and following this graduation. At least one final applause for all the speakers and the graduation. I mean, it's always quite, yeah, emotional to see the end of any OLS course. So it's really nice to see you. I think one thing we need to do before leaving, it's a group photo. Amy or Marika, do you take the photo? It would be good. I'm not relying on my internet connection now. So if I disappear, it's because of internet. Yeah.
I can take that. Yeah, please.
So
give us the best OLS face
yeah,
ever.
exactly.
All right. 3, 2, 1. There you go. Great. I'm going to pass it now finally to Emmy. If there's any last word, Emmy.
Yeah, so this is our second graduation session. There's one more tomorrow, closer to the evening, I think 5 p.m. London time. Don't quote me on that. Check this calendar, please. And on Slack, where we'll be posting these messages as we go. There are 2 more graduation sessions in July as well, so keep an eye out for those as well. And it's lovely to have you all. Anything else to add, our Batul, Marika, Bernice? All right. Have a lovely day all, and thank you so much. I'm going to stop the stream now. Thank you.